Have you ever come across a document so perfect, so flawless, that it seemed beyond suspicion? Imagine an official-looking identity, validated by international databases, crossing borders and systems without a single red flag. Now, what if I told you that the person behind that document never actually existed? This isn't a scene from a spy thriller. It's a reality that investigators stumbled upon, revealing a mystery that defies everything we understand about identity and security. What you're about to discover might surprise you. Authorities found a passport, birth certificates, tax records, and social security information, all impeccably aligned and authenticated by the world's most stringent verification systems. Yet, when they tried to trace this individual's history, every trail led to a complete dead end. No fingerprints, no background, no family ties. It was as if this person was a ghost, created out of thin air but recognized everywhere. How could such a flawless existence be fabricated without detection? This anomaly exposed the silent work of one of the most elusive figures in the criminal underworld, known only as the architect. Unlike typical forgers who alter documents, the architect doesn't just fake papers, he forges entire lives. Every medical record, school transcript, financial history, and digital footprint is designed with such precision that even the most advanced government systems can't differentiate the fake from the real. Mafia operatives, fugitives, and high-level criminals have all relied on him to vanish into new identities, erasing their pasts with surgical accuracy. Stay with me until the end, because this story isn't just about counterfeit documents. It's about how one man outsmarted global governments and intelligence agencies. The architect's network was his fortress, built on trust and silence, until one breach shattered the fragile balance. What followed was a high-stakes game of cat and mouse involving top investigators and dangerous criminal factions. But just as the authorities closed in, the architect did something no one expected. He disappeared completely. His erasure wasn't just physical, it was digital, bureaucratic, and psychological. Records evaporated, leads vanished, and every attempt to pin down his true identity ended in frustration. The deeper the experts dug, the clearer it became that he had stepped into one of his own creations, living under a new life as real as any born from birth. The question now is not just who he is, but where he is hiding in plain sight. As we dive deeper into this astonishing case, you'll learn how the architect's unmatched skills turned the concept of identity on its head, and why his story remains one of the most baffling mysteries in modern criminal history. The layers of deception run deep, and the game is far from over. What happens next will change everything you thought you knew about forgery, identity, and the power of a single man's genius. Stay with me. What unfolds next blurs the line between truth and illusion more than ever. Don't miss a detail. Every moment peels back another layer of the architect's elusive world. Whispers in the shadows spoke of the architect as a ghost who never showed his face but left trails no one could trace. He wasn't just a forger of papers or fake IDs, he built entire lives from nothing. Names, histories, bank accounts, jobs, families. Real enough to pass any test, to fool any system. He could erase a person and create another in their place, seamless and invisible. In the underground, his work was a currency higher than anything else. Mafias leaned on him when old bloodlines became threats. Fugitives sought him out when the law closed in too tight. Even spies and corrupt officials knew of him but kept their distance. He wasn't just a fixer. He was a godmaker in the world of shadows. Unlike lawyers who argued in courtrooms or hackers who cracked codes, the architect worked quietly behind the scenes. His creations didn't just slip past security, they became security. A new identity from him wasn't a fake. It was a new reality, born out of careful construction and patient design. No one could prove it was false without tearing apart the very fabric of the system. His reputation grew because every step he took was calculated, every detail verified. Contacts in the criminal network spoke of him with a mix of reverence and fear. If you had his work, you were untouchable. If you crossed him, you disappeared so completely you might as well have never existed. Some said he operated alone, moving through cities like a shadow, never staying long enough to be caught. Others whispered about a network, a hidden web of operatives who gathered bits of data and forged connections under his command. No one knew for sure, What was certain was the cost. His services weren't cheap, but they were worth the price when your life depended on it. News traveled fast when someone vanished and reappeared with a clean slate, a new face, a new story. The architect's signature was invisible, but the results spoke louder than any name. His work was a weapon against the relentless reach of law and order, a tool for those who lived outside the rules. Authorities hunted for him, but they were chasing smoke. No files, no cameras, no witnesses who could put a face to the name. The few who got close either vanished or turned up with nothing but silence. His existence was the biggest secret in the underground, protected by layers of deception and fear. This wasn't just forgery, it was transformation. The architect didn't just change papers, he changed lives. And in that power lay a danger that made even the most ruthless criminals wary. To find him was to find the key to disappearing, or to being erased completely. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of multiple screens. Rows of digital profiles flickered across the walls. Faces with no past, names with no history. The architect sat back, eyes scanning each one like a chess player studying the board. Every detail mattered. Every gap had to be filled. He started with the basics: birth certificates, medical records, school transcripts. None existed before, so he created them from nothing. The files were flawless, stamped with official seals, signed by names no one would question. He didn't just copy forms. He built histories layer by layer so deep they could withstand casual scrutiny. A new identity took shape on the screen. A man who never existed had a childhood in a small town, complete with hospital visits, childhood vaccinations, a list of teachers, even a high school diploma. The architect pulled up financial records next. Bank accounts opened years ago, steady deposits from invisible incomes, credit cards with perfect payment histories, loans taken and repaid on time. Each entry was timed perfectly, matching the fabricated timeline of the life. He moved on to digital footprints, social media profiles uploaded with photos and posts spread over years. Friends and family added, profiles just as detailed, just as real. The architect linked them carefully, creating a web of connections that mimicked real relationships. The family tree was extensive, with relatives in different cities, each with their own fabricated lives. Background checks ran clean, no flags, no inconsistencies. The architect's fingers moved fast, but every step was deliberate. He exploited gaps in bureaucratic systems, targeting places where oversight was weak or outdated. He inserted false data into government databases, slipping through the cracks between agencies. Cross-border checks, those meant to catch fraud, were no match. Each country's records reinforced the others, forming an unbreakable chain of verification. He watched as the new identity passed through simulated government scans. No alerts, no warnings. The profile was solid, ready to pass at borders, banks, job applications, ready to disappear into the world without a trace of the real person behind it. A message popped up on one screen: another job, another life to build. The architect didn't hesitate. He opened a fresh folder, starting again. Outside, the city moved unaware. But here, in this shadowed room, entire lives were born, crafted with precision, built to fool the most thorough investigations. The architect's work was invisible, but its consequences rippled far beyond these walls. The first to arrive was a man with a sharp edge in his eyes, moving like he was always watching for a threat that never left his back. A soldier in a forgotten war between crime families. He needed to vanish before a hit came for him. Fear tightened his jaw as he handed over a battered passport, a last remnant of a life that no longer belonged to him. The architect didn't ask questions. He knew this man's type, caught in debts paid with blood, running from a past that wanted him dead. Next came a woman who spoke in whispers, her hands trembling as she slid a folder across the table. She was an informant, marked by those who once called her ally. Her face was a map of sleepless nights, every line a warning she ignored until it was too late. Her new identity had to be flawless, no trails, no links to the life she left behind. She needed more than papers. She needed a shield against those who hunted her. The architect's silence was the only promise she could trust. A third client arrived in the dead of night, his suit expensive but his eyes hollow. A financial criminal on the run from courts that wanted him locked away for decades. He didn't ask for just new documents. He wanted a disappearance so complete that even the agencies tracing his money would stop looking. His desperation was sharp. Edged with panic, he hid beneath calm words. The architect's work was the last lifeline between him and a lifetime behind bars. The last was a man with the quiet arrogance of someone used to power slipping through his fingers. A corrupt official who'd burned too many bridges, seeking a fresh start far from the cities that knew his name. His request was simple on the surface. New identity, clean slate, but beneath it lay a trail of betrayals and enemies waiting to settle old scores. He needed a reinvention that erased everything, down to the smallest trace of his former self. The architect watched him closely, knowing that this client's fall could ignite fires far beyond their room. Each client carried a different danger. Each risked everything to disappear without a trace. Their desperation made the architect's role more crucial, the stakes higher with every new life he built. They didn't just want papers. They wanted to be ghosts, erased from records, memories, and maps. The architect's skill was their only guarantee, an invisible line between survival and complete destruction. As they left, the room fell silent again. The weight of their secrets hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware of the lives unraveling in shadows, or the man who turned those lives into nothing but whispers in the dark. The architect didn't accept cash. His payments came in pieces as solid as the silence around them. Gold bars slipped into locked trunks, rare paintings that vanished behind layers of corporate fronts, and digital currencies born long before the world knew to watch. Each transfer was a quiet nod, a handshake without faces, sealed with political favors whispered in back rooms where no one kept records. His protection wasn't a single guard or a fortress. It was a shifting maze. Safe houses appeared on old maps, then disappeared. Meetings rotated between nondescript cafes, abandoned warehouses, and luxury apartments rented under false names. At every step, intermediaries stood between him and the world, a chain of shadows that blurred his presence deeper with each link. He never met his clients directly. Faces were replaced by voices, and voices by messages sent through channels no outsider ever saw. When a deal closed, it rippled through the network. A criminal family in the north took a cut, their loyalty bought with promises of influence. Another family in the south provided muscle, their silence as valuable as any weapon. These alliances weren't written contracts. They were silent agreements, understood in glances and nods. A balance of power held in tension, always ready to shift if the architect's hand slipped. He moved like a ghost through a city that never stopped watching. His name was a puzzle, the center of a web where every thread led to another shadow. Each payment expanded his reach, pulling new players into his orbit. With every exchange, he gained more than wealth, he gained leverage. Doors opened in government offices, whispers spread in police precincts, and rival criminals learned to measure their moves against his unseen influence. The network acted as both shield and filter. Threats never reached him directly. When a rival tried to trace his steps, they found dead ends, false leads, and empty rooms. His intermediaries vanished before questions could be asked. Messages were encrypted, voices disguised, locations changed at the last moment. The architect's world was built on layers of obfuscation. It was impossible to find the core without collapsing the whole structure. Every transaction tightened the web. A shipment delivered here, a favor returned there. Each move was calculated, a piece in a larger game where power was currency and trust was the rarest commodity. The architect's influence spread quietly but relentlessly, turning him from a mere fixer into a force that shaped the city's darkest corners. Behind closed doors, his network thrived, silent, efficient, and untouchable. And with every new client who vanished without a trace, the legend of the architect grew darker, more untouchable, a shadow cast long over the city's underworld. The message came through just after midnight. A single name blinked on the screen: Mercer. The architect's client, the one who had always stayed in the shadows, was gone. Not vanished, turned. The cold reality hit immediately. Mercer had crossed the line. He had handed over pieces of the operation to someone else. Someone outside the circle. In a cramped hotel room on the edge of the city, Mercer sat facing a man in a black coat. His hands trembled as he slid a small drive across the table. The man didn't speak. His eyes never left Mercer's face. Fear had broken the client's resolve. The promise of protection had crumbled under the weight of a deal with authorities. Mercer's defiance was born not from loyalty but from desperation. His back against the wall, his choices narrowing to silence or betrayal. Back in the architect's hidden base, the alert flashed again. The data Mercer had leaked was small but deadly. It exposed routes, safe houses, names. The threads began to unravel. The architect's network, usually airtight, showed cracks where there should have been steel. His trusted couriers were suddenly vulnerable. Old contacts became liabilities. The city's underworld, once a sealed vault, was now porous. The architect moved fast. Orders were whispered into phones. Messages sent in coded bursts. Every known safe point was locked down or abandoned. But the damage was done. The breach spread like wildfire through the dark alleys and quiet corners where deals were made. Rival factions caught wind. The police began to close in, their movements sharper, more targeted. Even some of the architect's closest allies questioned their safety. In a shadowed bar, a low-level enforcer received a warning call. His face went pale. The name Mercer was enough to ignite panic. Word spread, not through official channels, but through hurried whispers, quick glances, and restless hands. The loyalty that had held the network together was fraying. Paranoia settled in, thick and fast. The architect watched the fallout unfold on screens, his expression unreadable. The client who broke the pact had shifted the balance. Now, every step forward was a gamble against exposure. Every ally could be the next to fall. The city's underbelly was shifting. Danger close, trust shattered, and the architect forced to act before the entire operation collapsed around him. The architect's eyes flicked across the dim glow of monitors. A single message, brief and cold, confirmed the breach. Without hesitation, he reached for a phone, dialing numbers only a ghost could remember. Voices answered, terse and clipped. Orders came fast. Shutdowns, disappearances, silence. Safe houses emptied within hours. Men and women slipped into shadows, abandoning gear, burning contacts. The architect oversaw the movements like a conductor, each step deliberate and exact. One by one, locations went dark. Locks were changed, codes wiped clean, keys vanished. Communication lines that once buzzed with coded chatter fell silent. Devices were crushed, signals jammed, networks severed. Intermediaries vanished, calls unanswered, messages deleted. No one spoke of the architect anymore. He erased the trails carved over years in a matter of days, leaving behind only empty rooms and cold walls. Outside, the city's underworld felt the change. Dealers found their usual contacts unreachable. Operatives noticed whispers fading, meetings canceled without explanation. The balance shifted, but no one could say why. Agencies monitoring the shadows picked up on the pattern, systems collapsing with eerie precision, like a silent machine grinding to a halt. The architect moved constantly, slipping through alleys, changing vehicles, blending into crowds. Every step calculated to avoid detection. Surveillance efforts hit dead ends. Cameras captured faces that were never there before. Tracks led to abandoned sites or into the maze of the city's forgotten corridors. He tore through his own network, cutting loose anyone who could be a liability. Trust was a liability now. The betrayal had fractured more than loyalty. It had broken the foundation. The architect's response was swift and ruthless. No mercy for those who might betray him next. In a small, windowless room, he paused briefly. Fingers hovered over a worn map, red pins pulled free. The room hummed with quiet urgency, screens flickering as data vanished. The outlines of a new plan began to emerge, one built on silence, on shadows within shadows. Outside, the city carried on, oblivious to the invisible war reshaping its underbelly. But those who knew the game sensed the shift. Contacts went dark, safe routes closed, alliances crumbled. The architect was gone, but his absence was louder than any threat. The network's ghost had moved, and everything it touched was disappearing. The room was empty when the last connection severed. Screens blinked off one by one. Accounts vanished without a trace. The architect's fingers had danced through the night, cutting lines, erasing code, wiping every digital footprint. Where once there had been networks, databases, and identities, now there was only silence. No alerts, no warnings, just a void. Banks closed his accounts. Legal records dissolved as if never filed. Every license, every permit, every paper trail linked to him was shredded from the system. Agencies scrambled to track the financial flows, but the money had evaporated, melted into layers of untraceable transfers and shell entities. The usual breadcrumbs weren't there. Nothing to follow. Communication lines blinked dead. Phones he owned either disconnected or reprogrammed to reroute calls to dead ends. Emails bounced or auto-responded with errors. Contacts who might have been real were replaced by ghosts. Accounts that existed for hours, then folded quietly into nothing. Attempts to ping him led to servers that refused connection or redirected to unrelated data. Surveillance footage from the city showed no sign. No departure, no arrival. No face in the crowd matched his. The streets, the alleys, even the hidden corners where he once moved freely offered no clue. Cameras caught shadows, but none belonged to him. His presence was a phantom. Inside government offices, agents ran through lists of known aliases. Each one dissolved just as quickly as it appeared. Pseudonyms tied to rental agreements, phone lines, or social media vanished. Even private investigators found themselves chasing dead ends, led down corridors of false information and automated responses. The tools designed to track him turned into traps for those who pursued. He rebuilt himself in silence. Using the same methods he had refined for others, he crafted a new identity from scratch. One with no past, no link to the city, no digital echo. A man with no history, no records, no debts. His new face was a blank slate. His new life a hidden code beyond reach. The agency's frustration grew. Every database search, every warrant, every tip led nowhere. The architect wasn't just missing. He had unmade himself, dismantled every trace until nothing remained. His disappearance was a quiet statement, precise and final, a clean break from a world that tried to catch him. Outside, the city churned on, unaware of the complete erasure. But in the shadows, the ones who played the game knew the truth. He had vanished perfectly, gone without a mark, without a sound. The ghost was no longer a presence to fear. He was the absence itself. Screens flickered in a dim room crowded with half-empty coffee cups and scattered papers. Analysts leaned closer, eyes narrowing on lines of fragmented data. A single file name appeared, then vanished. Another popped up, an incomplete record missing key details, like a name cut in half or a date that made no sense. No full identity, no solid lead, just pieces scattered and blurred. One analyst pointed to a log showing a server path that led nowhere. It ended abruptly, as if erased mid-step. Another found a batch of bureaucratic forms with tiny mismatches. Dates that didn't add up, signatures that didn't belong, addresses that looped back to empty lots. At first, the team thought these were errors, glitches in the system. But the pattern grew too consistent, too deliberate. They began piecing together a map of these fragments. Each anomaly marked a point, a whisper of movement. The data didn't reveal who the architect was. It only showed where he had touched. A ghost trail of digital fingerprints, faint and elusive, but real. These were not mistakes or oversights. They were traces left behind on purpose, the only evidence of his existence. As the days passed, the fragments formed a loose network. It hinted at meetings, exchanges, shifts in control. But every path ended in silence. No calls, no messages, no faces. Just shadows moving behind locked doors. The analysts watched the map grow, frustrated by its gaps. Every connection raised more questions than answers. One evening, a quiet alert pulled a junior analyst from her work. A hidden folder surfaced briefly on a secure server, then disappeared again. she managed to grab a screenshot before it vanished. The folder contained partial transaction records, incomplete but enough to suggest a larger operation. Still, no name, no signature, just a trace like a fingerprint on glass. The team realized these fragments were all the architect had left. No direct contact, no open channels, only deliberate hints scattered through the systems he once controlled. Each anomaly was a lockpick left behind, a breadcrumb meant to mislead, or maybe to test who was watching. They tried to follow these threads, to catch a glimpse of the man himself. But the trail always ended before the truth appeared. The architect was never there to be caught. His presence was defined by absence, by what was missing rather than what was found. These digital marks became the closest anyone could get. In the quiet hum of the control room, the team stared at their screens. The scattered fragments, the abandoned paths, the mismatched data. They were the only signs left in the wake of a man who erased himself completely. No face, no name, just the ghostly outline of a shadow operation fading fast into the dark. After exhaustive investigation, it became clear that the architect was never located because he effectively vanished into one of the many identities he constructed. The absence of consistent records combined with conflicting data points led analysts to conclude that he used the same identity building systems he once sold to clients to fabricate a new, untraceable persona for himself. Each digital footprint associated with him collapsed under scrutiny, revealing gaps and deliberate distortions that made it impossible to pin down a fixed location or true identity. The systems designed for creating legal yet fabricated identities provided the perfect framework for him to disappear. Instead of being a single individual, the architect became a composite figure, a network of identities layered over each other, none of which could be verified or connected definitively. This method allowed him to blend seamlessly into the vast population, effectively erasing the trail that might have led to his capture. His knowledge of digital architecture and identity manipulation gave him an advantage no standard investigative process could overcome. Despite the extensive efforts to trace him, the architect may still be active, living unnoticed among millions, with an identity that no system can flag or verify. This possibility keeps the case open and unresolved, serving as a reminder that the man who engineered countless lives learned precisely how to disappear without a trace. His story ends not with a confrontation or capture, but with the unsettling reality that he exists beyond the reach of conventional detection. This conclusion leaves us with a critical understanding of how identity can be engineered and erased in the digital age. As this story closes for now, it highlights the evolving challenges faced by those who seek truth amid layers of constructed realities. Stay connected for more investigations that delve into these complex and often unseen worlds. If this story sparked your interest, consider engaging with the content through likes, comments, or subscriptions to continue exploring cases like this together.